Alright, so today I want to talk about this CBC poll that was done, and Maxime Bernier is also talking about it. I have his tweet here, obviously. And he titles it, the CBC title is Canadians Frustrated by the State of Democracy. Maxime Bernier tweeted out almost 70% of the survey's participants feel that government officials don't care what ordinary Canadians think. And then he adds on, not surprising given that all major parties except the PPC ignore issues central concern to voters. No, I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think that a better way of putting it would be all of the major parties ignore issues that are touchy or maybe a little bit uncomfortable for people to talk about. But I wanted to talk about the fact that Canadians overwhelmingly are dissatisfied at the state of government, but yet the overwhelming majority of people's solution to the problem is to give the government more power, whether it's the right or the left. And it just shows just how dumbed down the average person is, and unfortunately, there isn't a better word for it than dumbed down. And this is a problem from public schools, colleges, of just indoctrinating people that government is extremely necessary to society, and the more government, the better, short of communism, basically. And that's basically what we're taught. And I mean, try bringing up to the average person suggesting that government should be less involved, especially in Canada, in healthcare, in public schools, and anything. And it's even people on the right. I would say even probably 80 to 90%, maybe even more, probably 90% of people who are on the right. These are people that having things the way they are directly don't benefit them, or directly don't benefit them, and yet they still support it. That's just the level of the indoctrination, that we have policies that directly don't even benefit people, but yet they still support them. Like, that's how many times we've been told in our lifetime that, how important government is, and without government, society would collapse. So that's kind of the main point I wanted to get at, is that if we want the problems to get better, the only solution to it is the free market, or in other words, volunteerism. It's a solution to where people are forced to work together. And I was reading, if you've ever read the book Influence by, I think it's Robert Cialdini, I believe is how you pronounce it, or Cialdini. They did a study of young boys in summer camp, and they basically made it so like they tried to create rivalries between the two groups in every way they possibly could. And then what they also wanted to figure out was, okay, how can we get people who have been vicious rivalries to work together? And they found out that the only way to do it was to make it so a situation had to come up to where, unless you were willing to work together for the betterment of both groups, the only other solution being that both groups don't benefit. So basically, the only way to fix the problem was to create a solution to where both groups benefit. And that's the problem we have now, is that people like this, we don't really make it so that both groups benefit. It's kind of a us or them mentality. And again, the big point of this video being, if we want things to get better, we have to reduce the size and power of the state. It's not possible. There's no way around it. And the problem with that is that would require a little bit of suffering. But point being, there's going to be a lot of suffering if we don't fix things now. The problem is, a lot of people tend to be not very intelligent when it comes to these kind of things, and people tend to be very short-sighted in that they only really care about the here and now. It doesn't matter if we have, whatever, 100 trillion or 100 billion. No, I don't know what Canada's debt is, but the U.S. is about 22 trillion. And eventually, debt gets to the point to where you can't manage it anymore. If you're a heroin addict, eventually it gets to the point to where, you can't do it enough. You're sick because you can't even do it enough. And if you're a heroin addict that's in the earlier to mid stages, it's best to wean yourself off, because even though it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable in the here and now to get off, it's going to be really, really, really uncomfortable down the road to fix things. And that's the exact way we're going in society. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable to get rid of the free healthcare, the welfare, all this kind of stuff. But eventually, when society collapses and all the people die that people claim that they claim to care about as their reason for the free healthcare and the welfare, then we're going to be right back to square one. Again, if you know the plane is going to crash or you know the plane's going to run out of gas in an hour, it's probably a good idea to land it now, you know, sooner rather than later, right? So it's like Stefan Molyneux says, you know, we can either have a soft landing or we can have a hard crash landing. So, and that's kind of something that the PPC in Canada is about as close to a government, you know, political party out there that I know of, that I think the people that are disenfranchised at the state of politics in Canada, even in the U.S., even though they only have the Democrats and the Republicans, but that we can have. They're for the abolition of corporate welfare. They want to rein in the size and power of the state. They want to rein in the indoctrination in the public schools and universities, all this kind of stuff. And go look at their platform. If you're disenfranchised with the state of the Conservatives and the Liberals in Canada, it's exactly what we want. And this is the first election in my mind that I think the vote splitting argument is stupid, because the Conservatives are no longer conservative. You're not going to notice a massive difference between the Conservatives and the Liberals when the Conservatives get elected, assuming they do, which it's looking like they do. So if you really want change, then vote PPC. I mean, we know they're not going to win, at least it's highly unlikely, but vote PPC as an FU to the establishment, the Conservatives and the Liberals. And when everyone notices that, hey, the PPC actually got a pretty sizable portion of the vote, that's just going to give all the more legitimacy to them next election and going forward. So that's about all I wanted to talk about in this video. I think it's a very telling stat that, again, 70% of people, and again, imagine that what the number would be if the government wasn't, and you know, public schools, the mainstream media, all this stuff, wasn't constantly propagandizing people. That'd be like 99%, maybe 95%. There'd be some percent of the population that are still drinking the Kool-Aid, but this is becoming a growing issue, and the problem is that people's solution is still to just vote the exact same way they always have and continue to blame the other side the same way they always have, and never double or look back and think, hey, maybe my thoughts were wrong. And that's, you know, I've changed my tune on politics. I never thought I'd support a different political party, and here I am supporting the PPC. I never even thought I would vote again after the last election, to be honest. And the PPC came along, which was almost exactly what I was looking for. So here they are, and here we go. So the next election, we're less than 2 months away, so things are really going to start heating up. I would look for some made up or over hyped scandals to come up on the PPC and the Conservatives. So stay tuned for all that stuff, and if you like these videos, make sure to stay tuned for that. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.